Hello everyone, welcome to our daily devotion. Today is Friday, June 5th, and our devotion comes out of Jeremiah chapter 51, verses 15 and 16. We're going to close out our devotion today, starting a new quarter of D6 literature starting Monday. So today we're finishing up, and our weekly theme has been, what does the Bible say about dinosaurs? And we're really, when we talk about what does the Bible say about dinosaurs, we're actually really trying to ask a larger question about what does the Bible say about science. And so when we talk about science in accordance to the Bible and in accordance to God's creation, we're talking about God's creation. We're talking about the foundational elements that God has put into place, phenomenon that happen that we can measure and test scientifically. And so I largely find that there's two types of people whenever they see and look out into God's creation. There are those who find great amazement and beauty and wonder in what they see. So I've never been to the Grand Canyon, but I know that those who have, they stand over it and they just think about the awesome power of God to shape and form this canyon, or that it was shaped and formed even through the waters of the flood of Noah. And so those things, they start to play into effect about just being awestruck by how beautiful it is. And then there's other people, and I fall into this category. They stand at the Grand Canyon and they start to think how it was made. They think about the floodwaters and the mud and the landslides and the great waters that bubbled forth from the deep of the flood of Noah, and how fast it must have made it. And so secular science, maybe taught in schools or taught more popularly, would tell you that the Colorado River over a great many years carved the Grand Canyon. But creation science, many scientists on the creation side of things would tell you that it's not a little bit of water over a long amount of time, but it was a large amount of water over a little amount of time. And so that's kind of how I fall into things. Is I always want to know how it's made, how was it created, how did he do it? When I see a lightning strike, I want to think about the charges that are present where the lightning actually meets in the middles off the ground and from the cloud. I always am just curious about those things. So today's teaching point, though, is just one teaching point, and it states whether or not it just states this. My one teaching point states this: whether you fall in line with looking in wonder of God's beauty and the majesty of creation, or you're a tinkerer like me and you want to know how it works. No matter which side of that aisle you fall upon. Everything we look at depends fully upon God's creative power. And so I want to read Jeremiah chapter 51, verses 15 and 16 to maybe talk about that a little bit. Verse 15 says this: "It is He who made the earth by His power, who established the world by His wisdom, and by His understanding stretched out the heavens. When He utters His voice, there is tumult of waters in the heavens. And He makes the mist rise from the ends of the earth. He makes lightning for the rain, and He brings forth the wind from His storehouses." And so we get this idea that no matter if we're one of those people that want to know how it works, or one of those people that simply stand in awe of its working, we understand that God's wisdom has done this. God's mind, God's design has done these things. And so for those who fall on the side of it's beautiful or it's wonderful, there's a trap that we can fall into. And so it's a very popular trap that you see really kind of proclaimed popularly in the world today, that actually stops short at worshiping creation instead of worshiping our Creator God. And so many would look to the beauty of earth and tend to glorify the earth instead of glorifying God from the beauty of earth. We've talked about this in previous devotions, but a recap real quick. You hear it in phrases like, the earth will heal itself, or nature will take things back, or we are even so much as saying mankind is a plague upon nature, a plague upon the earth. And we see it a lot with different agendas. Not to get political, but a lot of the global warming or climate change agenda is based upon that earth is this almost intelligent being in itself, and we are the plague that's robbing it. And I share with you that's just not true. The reason I reject the a lot of the climate change agenda, I do believe that there is climate change, but I believe that the earth is continually recovering from the flood event. Just to let you get into my mind for a second. But I believe that a lot of the agenda is meant to value or uplift the earth, which in turn devalues in the minds of many people the glorious nature of God. And so I want to share with you, I'm not a climate change denier, but I have the understanding of God's sovereignty. I understand that there is a creator that rules over creation. So creation cannot be the highest point of beauty or virtue. The creator is. And the creation sits underneath him, underneath his sovereignty, underneath his wisdom and his ability. And he is always able. And so for those who just stand upon and look at the beauty of the earth, don't just stop at how beautiful the earth is and let that be glorified in you, but instead see the beauty of the earth and realize how infinitely more beautiful our God is. And then the second part of this is understanding that those who do want to know how things work, those who are scientifically minded or they seek to understand how the processes of nature works, understand that our understanding even is based upon the intelligent design of God. God has made our minds to be able to work this way. God has made our brains to be able to reason and given us discernment and functionality in making decisions. And so when we go out and observe and look at things scientifically, God has laid all the elements in place that we measure, all the variables in place that those all didn't form from nothingness, but they formed from the very voice of God, from the very wisdom of God, from the intelligent design of God. And so just to recap, our one teaching point today is that our ability, no matter if we look upon something with wonder and awe, or if we look upon something more scientific or trying to understand how it works, all those abilities that we have to do either one of those things, or somewhere, maybe you're somewhere in the middle of both of those worlds, all of that ability that we have to do those things depends upon what God has already done. It depends upon the creative mind of God. It is based upon the nature of God. And so this scripture in Jeremiah chapter 51 tells us that it was His power that made the earth. It was His knowledge and His wisdom that stretched across the heavens. So when we look up at the stars in the sky, we understand that they are, in our mind, great and wonderful and expansive and huge and infinitely big. But really, they sit very limited compared to the infinite God that we worship. And so I challenge you to worship that God, to worship the biblical understanding of God, how God has revealed Himself to us through His Word, to worship Him that way, understanding that there is no limits to His power, there is no limitations to His wisdom. He never runs out of knowledge. He never is taken by surprise. He is never guessing. He is always sovereign. He's always above all creation, and He formed it. So He owns it, and He rules over it. And so I take great comfort in that as a child of God, that He even looks over me and my everyday goings on. So this is Brother Daniel with our daily devotion. Have a great weekend. Hope to see you Sunday. And we'll be back Monday with another devotion. May God bless.